Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. This is a really big political week, and we are at the political roundtable to talk about some of the biggest stories. My guests are Dr. Niambi Carter, Associate Professor in the School of Public Policy at the University of Maryland, Keith Harrison with the HBCU Times print magazine, and Ebony McMorris, White House correspondent for the American Urban Radio Network. Thank you all so much for joining the conversation. We have so much to talk about. Let's start, obviously, the RNC. This is day 3 for the RNC. The theme is, or was on Monday, Make America Wealthy Again, and Tuesday, Make America Safe Once Again. And tonight, the headliner, Trump's VP pick, J.D. Vance. It's the whole thing is really kind of interesting, for me. Dr. Carter, let's talk about J.D. Vance. What does he bring to the table for the RNC?
Well, he's young. That's for one. In some ways, he makes up for what Donald Trump lacks in sort of finesse. I mean, he's a Yale Law graduate. He also has gotten a lot of credit for being Appalachian, being poor, and all of those things. None of those things are quite true. Nonetheless, that's how he came to our public consciousness. And this is, I think, the youth and that sort of refinement that Donald Trump lacks. I think J.D. Vance, and he's from a swing state, right? He's from the Midwest. He's representing the Midwest. So I think he has a lot of net positives, and I think they wanted an all-white man ticket this go round.
Ebony, you're nodding your head. All-white man ticket, certainly, but he doesn't do anything, I would argue, to expand the appeal.
I think so. Let me just say this. You started with the theme. I think the theme was really just keep America white again. I really do, because on the sidelines you saw Tim Scott and Byron Donaldson, and I wanted to say, y'all, brother, just stop, get out the sunken place, please, get out now. But with that, I mean, you're right. He's young, right? So this is 39 years old. He's a millennial. So now they have someone on the ticket that not only can, if Trump gets this, then they can have a foreseeable future. Not only that, President Biden put it right. He said, basically, this is another Trump. Really, honestly, I think he's like Trump 2.0. I think he says the quiet part very much out loud, even though he's trying to walk back some of the comments that he has seen. He has went from one extreme to the very far end of MAGA, and he's standing by it. He's standing in it. And I think that's what they wanted. I think that he feeds more red meat to the base. I don't know how much they think they're going to expand, but I know that they're trying to keep. And I think in this appeal for this unity conversation, we probably will see a much softer side. We're fresh off of an assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump, but you got to listen out for the details, because I promise you, woven within his speech and woven within the speech that we are going to hear from President Donald Trump is Project 2025. And it may sound soft the way they put it, but I promise you that it is in there. So tonight is how much likability we have. Will he be able to target some of the younger voters who may be MAGA but may not come out to the polls? So I think this is also a way to trumpet their people to come out if he wouldn't. It's a younger, it's Trump all over again, and maybe even Trump going a little harder in the trenches.
Did you say trumpet? I think that's what you said. I never miss a play on words.
I just got right. That's in these races. I don't know what's going to come out today, but I know what may come out tonight, and what has been come. They have all been answering this clarion call, because how can you go from calling somebody America's Hitler to all of a sudden kissing the ring, which Nikki Haley and the rest of them did?
Keith, your thoughts about J.D. Vance as a VP pick?
Probably, and the rest of the panel probably can speak to this better than I, but generally, vice presidential picks don't really do anything. I mean, they don't You know, they don't really expand the ticket. They don't bring in more voters. In this guy's case, Trump's probably already going to win the state of Ohio. So I'm not sure what he, for this particular race, brings. And it seems like a sort of, again, he's a version of Trump that's about 30 years younger. And he's clearly already said, you know what, that the former vice president, Trump's former vice president Pence, was wrong when he didn't try to stop the certification of that election. I would have stopped it. And that's all Trump wants. He wants somebody to say, you tell me what to do and I'll do it, whether it's legal, whether it's constitutional or not, I'll do it. And I think that's really what it's about because, gosh, I mean, Trump has such a hold on the Republican Party. I don't think he could have picked anybody to be vice president, and it probably wasn't going to hurt him. It's just that it's not going to necessarily help him.
Can I say something, Harold, really
Sure,
quick?
go ahead.
Because even when we talk about this VP pick, and I agree with everything you said, the sad thing, that notion wasn't applied to Vice President Kamala Harris. They acted like they wanted her to come in being the president and doing all these other things. And you're right, when we look at past vice presidents, what exactly, I mean, to me, except for like Cheney, I just really think he really had a hold. But when we think about that, their job is not as complicated as they tried to make it for Vice President Harris, and they called her a DEI pick. I think if you want to go to a DEI pick, I think if you want to make that classification, then J.D. Vance falls right in that DEI. Didn't even earn it, or whatever the qualifications are, because his qualifications don't stack up anywhere to where Vice President Harris's qualifications stacked up. And they are always trying to pull that out from her to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who has more qualifications than 80% of that court.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so Dr. Carter, help me with this. Am I just naive? Because I guess the thing that just gets under my skin, and we've seen it in every political party, but I think it really stands out right now because J.D. Vance came out very, very early speaking against Donald Trump, saying all of these things. He was saying he was a never Trumper and all of this other stuff. And now he's drinking the Kool-Aid. What is that when it comes to politics? What happened to the I said what I said part of it?
Well, quite frankly, I mean, he wants power. He wants to be next to the man. He wants adjacency. And so people will let you call their wives ugly. People will let you say that they're stupid. People will let you say that they're not smart. They'll let you talk about them in all manner of ways if it means they get to be next to the man, right? And it's been crazy because in these last days or so, some people are just finding out that J.D. Vance is married to an Indian woman and have been, tearing her down and questioning him and their family. So, I mean, people will give up their dignity for power. And I think J.D. Vance has traded his professional reputation. He's traded his potential to be something other than a Donald Trump sycophant for the moment. I mean, Donald Trump's influence won't last forever. Everyone is acting like it does because there were all kinds of people lined up to kiss the ring. Nikki Haley and all these folks who had so much to say about him were all there, right, to show their fealty and their loyalty to this man who's shown that he has no loyalty to anyone, frankly, not even his own vice president, right? So, J.D. Vance said what he needed to say when he thought that there was going to be some positive distinction that he could make, thinking that he could maybe be a maverick, a rogue, but then he realized this is where the party is. And so you better go along to get along. And when it looked like there was an opening, he took it. And it didn't matter what he said 6 months ago. He's now come around, right? He's seen the error of his ways, and Donald Trump is all good.
Yeah, Keith, you look like you have something to say about that part.
Well, he fell in line. Vance fell in line. DeSantis fell in line. Nikki Haley fell in line. Amber Rose fell in line. Why? I'm not exactly sure why she did.
We're going to talk about her in just a bit too. But please go ahead.
But they've all fallen in line, and that's probably one reason that so many people in this country are not fond of politicians, because you can't believe anything that they say. Too many of them will say one thing on May 1st, and then by July 1st they're going to go exactly opposite that, and that's a big turnoff to people, whether it's in the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, and it just is a big turnoff, I believe, to people.
Yeah,
and it's been it's been exhibited so far these first 3 days of the Republican convention.
Yeah, and you just mentioned this, Keith, and so I wanted to start with this. We're going to talk about it a little more after the break, but I am fascinated, absolutely fascinated by Amber Rose's appearance last night. This is what we heard her say.
Did my research to all things Donald Trump. And I started meeting so many of you, his right supporters. Donald Trump and his supporters don't care if you're black, white, gay, or straight. It's all love. Couldn't hit me. These are my people. This is where I belong.
Yeah, Amber Rose, video vixen, former exotic dancer, hip hop girlfriend. Look, no shade to the exotic dancer bit. You do what you have to do to survive. I mean that. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Do what you have to do. But how did this happen, Ebony? How did Amber Rose get to the RNC? And what does this mean for Black people?
From a woman who doesn't really say that she is Black. I'm not even going to dump Amber Rose down like sometimes we have heard her dumbed down, because I want her to stand 10 toes in what she said. A woman who has talked about how she supports the LGBTQ plus community, a woman who calls herself a feminist, a woman who is a self-proclaimed atheist, a woman who also leads this walk every year to help people who are affected by violence, sexual violence. You are the poster child for what they do not want. So my question is, what check did they give you? What check did they donate to one of your organizations? Because you cannot be that dumb, and don't blame it on your pro-Trump father for convincing you of this. You stood on a platform with people who are constantly trying to oppress others, and you say they don't care if you're Black, white, gay, or straight. They really don't. You spoke truth about that, because all they're looking for is bodies to come and keep and carry on their message. And in a single breath, she dismisses the very struggles that Black folk face on a daily, that people of color, that women face on a daily. We're talking about a woman who has come out in support of abortion, but standing on a stage with the vice president and president who don't agree with abortion on any type of level at all. And she says, these are my people. This is where I belong. Some people have said, you talked about her not being Black. I don't care whether you Black or white, because we got a big chocolate Supreme Court justice that's Black. He still ain't doing right. So I'm not caring about that. I'm talking about your character and your level of morale. You said you studied and you figured this out and you did your research. If you studied and actually did your research and that's the conclusion that you came to, then I'm trying to figure out how much did they pay you to do that.
Hold on. I want to hear from the rest of you as well. I need to take a break, but don't forget, you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. I'm Harold Fisher. The original Quiet Storm with John Mons is next on WHUR. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue with the political roundtable and some of the top stories of the week. My guests are Dr. Nyambi Carter, Associate Professor in the School of Public Policy at the University of Maryland. Keith Harrison, he is he's with the HBCU Times print magazine, and of course, Ebony McMorris, White House correspondent for the American Urban Radio Network. Dr. Carter, can you follow that drop the mic moment?
Well, I mean, I think what Ebony is speaking to is the opportunism. I mean, Amber Rose is a nomad, right? She is kind of I hate to use it, but in common parlance, I mean, she's a stunt queen. She is doing whatever she can do to gather whatever attention. Allegedly, there's a crypto scheme that is being investigated, and this is potentially why she might be cozying up to them. But I think more importantly, this is a person who thrives off attention. And more importantly, as someone who doesn't claim to be Black, has built her platform largely on the backs of Black people in the LGBTQ plus community, right? I mean, she did these slut walks talking about positivity around sexuality and not shaming women for, making decisions with their bodies. And I think by and large, you had a lot of Black women who were supportive of her, particularly after her noted breakups where people tried to bring up her past as an exotic dancer, as a disqualifier for the kind of person, the kind of mother she could be. But then to see her stand up there and cozy up to a man who not only doesn't view you as a full human being, who wants to take away your rights, more importantly, the rights of your two Black sons and their Black fathers that you are more than happy to have relationships with, I find her particularly disgusting and dangerous, because these are the very same communities that have supported her, that have bought her merchandise, that came to her events, came to her functions, and now she's standing there saying, well, this guy isn't so bad. And what's really funny about this research that she's citing, right? We never see the citation. We never know where the research comes from. You never can point us in the direction of this research, because
her daddy.
Exactly. And if it's real research, we should all come to the same conclusion. So how is it that this woman from Philly, who's lived off of being racially ambiguous and in proximity to Black people, who owes her platform to those very same Black and LGBTQ plus people, ends up on the stage with that man? And let's be clear, those people at the RNC were not happy that she got a primetime spot on must have been Black night, right? Because everybody that was colored spotted out that night. Those people don't want to see you there either. And yet you sit there and you say with a straight face that these are your people. Do you mean the same people that said Jews will not replace us? The same people that killed Heather Heyer? These are your people? So I'm done with Amber Rose. I hope she's done with the rest of us too. I hope she knows that where she is over there, to please stay, because she's also in that video that just dropped where I guess all Black people like is rap music and graffiti and chains and gold and sneakers. As you can tell, I'm irritated, not because she can move the needle, but because people like her are dangerous and disingenuous. And I cannot stand people who use Black people, who use LGBT people and marginalized people more generally to get themselves to a place and throw those very same people under the bus when it's politically expedient.
And let's be really, really clear for our listeners and viewers that, Dr. Carter, and I don't have to defend you, you can defend yourself, but you were not calling her a slut. Slut Walk is actually an organization that was founded to help women define the word slut as someone who is in control of their own sexuality, to reclaim it as a word of power for women. So I don't want anybody sending you, Dr. Carter. That. Yeah, I don't want anybody sending you emails saying that you called Amber Rose a slut by talking about.
Absolutely not calling her that.
Exactly. So just for we're here to inform people, and so that's what Slut Walk came from. Keith, what can you say about that?
Here's what
I'm trying to have you follow that one.
I'll take a different perspective, but I'll come at it from a different perspective. I don't understand what Trump thought he was getting out of putting her on the stage. I mean, she is at best a poor man's version of Kim Kardashian, but not even that, because Kim Kardashian has about 400 million IG followers. Amber Rose has, I think, about 24 million. It's a huge difference. And in terms of engagement, which is what these political campaigns look at for influencers, Amber Rose, her engagement with her followers is about 6%, 6.8%, which is good because the average is 3.5%. Kim Kardashian's is 21%. So I don't see what he's getting. What is he benefiting? How is he benefiting from this? I don't see it at all. I mean, I don't know what she has to offer him.
You think that was their first choice?
Well, that could be it, because clearly, again, I'm not one to always hold up Kim Kardashian as a shining example. You know, she's a great business person.
Mm-hmm.
But you compare the two in terms of social media influencers, there's no comparison. I mean, there just isn't any. And so I don't know. I don't get what the Republicans thought that they were getting with her.
And Keith, to your point, I think you cannot equate people who follow an Amber Rose or a Kim Kardashian with people who will vote for who they say you should vote for. You know, I think, there are people who follow Amber Rose, for example, to be entertained. But that's kind of where it stops.
See what products of hers or what makeup that she's using. I should buy. Yes.
Right.
And those are very different, I think, than, say, for instance, Taylor Swift followers, a bunch of whom, if they're voting age, if she says vote for Trump, they're going to vote for Trump because they're just rabid and they're about her. Amber Rose and Kim Kardashian, to an extent, their followers, even though like Kim has really high engagement on her social media platforms, they're not necessarily going to follow him. I think I agree with you 100%. They're not going to follow her because she says vote for Trump or vote for Biden or vote for Robert Kennedy. That's just not going to happen. That's not what they do. But campaigns are, they're I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see ads from the Trump campaign on a lot of Amber Rose's platforms, because one, is cheap, and so they can do it. But I just don't see the benefit to it.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about this assassination attempt on Saturday against former President Trump. There's still a lot of discussion about online chatter as it relates to this particular event, and I'm talking about security issues. Obviously, the Secret Service is on the hot seat right now, and there's also this discussion, and this may have been debunked, about some kind of Iranian plot. My goodness, Ebony, there's so much to this, and I also do want you to speak to the issue of some people think that this was a hoax. Well, not a hoax, but staged. I talked to a friend of mine today, and that's one of the first things she said to me about that. She said it was staged.
So on the staging one, you know how we are when we get together. I would dare go on a broadcast, but I was like, wait, I was like many people looking at it when it first came across. I'm like, wait a minute, how was he able to get his hand up? Why wasn't it? And then I saw the interview with the gentleman who said that they saw the guy. And then we saw reports later that said the local police did it. I mean, the local police saw him earlier, and that people were trying to alert the authorities. And now we're hearing this. Well, whose authority was it that the Secret Service put it on local police? And then at the end of the day, the conversations, even though we know that there's going to be an investigation into this, is that another conversation is that they are very stretched, very thin. But another part of that is I was hearing a really great report about when Vice President Cheney was attacked, that they got him up out of there, picked him up and got him out of there. It felt like in some ways, even when we heard some of the audio, that y'all have to get this man out of here. And he's telling you, I need to get my shoe. I need to get this. At that point, you have no reign and no control, because we're trying to protect your life. And while you push back, you are also putting the lives at risk of those who are trying to protect you. To me, that was a bit of a selfish act. We just kind of have to sit and wait and see where the chips may fall as far as the investigation. But it is very interesting, all the rhetoric that we saw, even with J.D. Vance coming out and tweeting that this is on Joe Biden, calling him a fascist, and we have to do something about that. This is who I'm telling you, he is Trump 2.0. Oh, and if that man being 78 years old, if something were to happen, God forbid nothing happens, but if something happens, that is who you need to be worried about stepping into that seat.
Mhm.
I mean, in my mind, there are a lot of things that just as a regular person came through my mind. I'm not gonna lie. As a
Yes.
reporter, I had to say, let me wait till the details come out. Stuff is looking a little suspicious. Black Twitter went a little crazy. But I have to sit and wait. But I think another issue that wasn't addressed. I really haven't heard it addressed. And it's a secondary. But that 20-year-old that shot him,
Mhm.
students from his school came out and said he been bullied the
Yeah.
entire time. No one has talked about that. So he's a registered Republican in your backyard. Y'all been bullying, and now he come after one of your own. You don't
Yeah.
want to deal with that at all, but you want to lay it at the feet of Democrats and say, if it had just been 1 inch closer, we would have been coming for you. All they needed was something just to
Yeah.
say we won another civil war. It had
Mhm.
nothing to do with that. They just looking for an excuse just to
Mhm.
say something.
And and I think what's really shocking, I'm sorry, Harold. I think what's really shocking here too is that these are the very same people who laughed when someone attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband in his underwear. This crazed man hit him with a hammer in the head. And these people made that a joke. And I'm not suggesting that assassination attempts are ever funny. And I agree. I'm like a lot of people. I mean, if we've been at events with presidents before or former presidents, and if there's a rooftop, there is someone on every single rooftop. It's not uncommon to maybe have some air support flying overhead. So the one roof that would have had a direct view to the stage, it's like, who was talking to who? This is clearly a problem of communication, that this person was left so vulnerable, right? That this presidential nominee. But I do think it's strange that when we see an active shooter event, and we've seen, unfortunately, too many, you don't see people put their heads back up or put their fist up for the photo opportunity. They're getting you out of there because it's dangerous. This threat had yet to be neutralized, and now it's merch. And so it's hard to feel the appropriate amount of solemnity right in this moment when you've turned it into a t-shirt, into sneakers, and things for purchase. You were almost seriously injured,
Or
right?
killed.
Right? Or worse, right? Or killed. And now it's your Lazarus moment. I just, there's something very unseemly about it. And the fact that the timing and all of this coming together to create this idea that Donald Trump is invincible. I mean, you even have Democrats saying he's going to win in November. November's a long time from now. And he won't win unless people decide today that no point to show up. But yet people have already sort of given in to the narrative. It's crazy.
And we forgot how he has called for the death of his own, like what happened during January 6th with Nancy Pelosi and even his own vice president. And even I still can't forget about the exonerated 5 when he took out a full-page ad. I understand I will never advocate for any type of violence, but you also have to own up to how you have been stirring the pot for so long. You thought it was going to come from the other side, but it came from your own.
That's right.
I will say this before we hear from Keith. One of the things we all know that Donald Trump has been unconventional in every way possible. And I'm not talking about before he ran for president, but I'm talking about since running for president. He has not been the kind of person who has respected protocol of any way, shape, or form. And so as it relates to the Secret Service being able to move him asking about his shoes, fist up, that I would argue that is who he is. Obviously, we remember the reporting from the January 6th Commission saying that he was fighting with his own Secret Service detail because he wanted to go to the Capitol. And so if that information is to be believed, what happened on Saturday or his reaction to it should not be surprising. Keith.
Yeah, well, to Trump, all of this is just a big TV show. And I think that's how he views everything. And that's how he communicates with his base in particular. And so that probably this thing just probably popped into his head immediately. But on the Secret Service efforts there, I have written about what Secret Service preparations when they're heads of state that are coming to visit Washington. And they are what they do in preparation is so detailed that they even go through the streets of the planned route and alternate routes and seal all the manhole covers because they don't want somebody to pop up out of there with some type of weapon or something. That's how detailed it is. If there are going to be meetings held at a hotel, they do background checks on every employee at that hotel. And then you get to this place and there's a rooftop 150 yards from the stage. And they say, well, that was on this 38-member local police department. That was on them to do. That just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
And of course, like all law enforcement agencies do, and Secret Service is a law enforcement agency. I read this morning something in the Washington Post where the Secret Service like, well, we're understaffed. We need more manpower. We need to hire more agents because we're stretched too thin. If we had appropriate staffing, we could have had some of our own people in that building or on top of the roof. Somebody will lose their job on this because it was clearly, guy on the roof was pointed out to people. That information was relayed to the command center on site. Nothing happened. And two, there was about 10 seconds after the shots were fired where the Secret Service agents assigned to him, essentially, it was 10 seconds where he was still, if there had been another shooter at a different angle, his head was available as a target, and they failed in that sense. So somebody's going to lose their job on this for sure.
Yeah, no question. Let us talk about President Biden. One of the things that has happened today is that California Congressman Adam Schiff has come up. He has called on Biden to step out of the presidential race. Also, President Biden was speaking to the NAACP on yesterday. He was saying that Trump was hell for Black people. Dr. Carter, is Joe Biden in trouble?
I think he is if Democrats keep doing this. Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that Republicans do really well is line up behind their man. They don't care what this person has done. They will hold their nose. Actually, they'll do it gleefully, right? But they do it at the end of the day. You had all of those people who had legitimate gripes with Donald Trump and real concerns about their party say what needed to be said. At this point, you have a bunch of Democrats who, instead of going with the protocol, because one of the things that's really upsetting me about these calls for Joe Biden to step down is nobody ever says, well, who's the other person? And when they do, the other people are inevitably white people. What about the succession plan we have in place? If he's too old, then, let the chips fall where they may. I think we can get him to January. And then Kamala Harris becomes the president. But nobody will ever answer why that's not okay. Why they don't want this Black woman who's been his number two all this time to take office. Because let's be clear, there's a reason you picked her, not only because she's a woman of color, but also she's young, just like he needed to be older for young Barack Obama. So while vice presidents don't do anything, they can balance a ticket. So now you have this really young Black woman, well-educated, who has all of the political bona fides, but nobody will say why she is unacceptable. They also haven't said what the fundraising plan is. They also haven't said what this convention is going to look like. How are the people who've been knocking doors and making phone calls and raising money for the last year going to show up at people's doors in Atlanta, in DC, in Philadelphia, in Milwaukee, in Los Angeles, all these, in Austin and Houston, and tell these people, now vote for some third person. We're not quite sure who it is, but not Joe Biden.
Yeah, maybe the assumption is that the Democrats will be like the Republicans and get behind whoever they pick.
Listen to Black women. That's the easy answer. Listen to Black women. And Black women said, we're going to stick with this horse.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We know that Black women, just like older voters, make differences in elections. But this is America. Do we think that Americans, be they Democrats, Black or not, just be they Democrats or Republicans or whatever, if they weren't going to, and I've said this before, if they weren't going to elect a Hillary Clinton with all of her experience and everything else, would they be willing to elect a Kamala Harris? This is America.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
they don't want to, but I think they need to answer why not and say it and stand on it, right? Don't do this whole, well, he's old. We knew he was old 4 years ago. This ain't no news.
Right.
We told you he was too old then, and y'all said, no, he's good. You let one bad night shake you to your core that you can't even go say, you know what, this is the fighter I picked. I'm just going to play the hand I got. There is a succession plan. Yes, it's a Black woman. No, we don't like it, but we're going to pull ourselves together. Instead, you keep going after this man. Pull it together.
Yeah. Keith, real quick, I've got some other topics to get to.
Okay.
Your reaction.
It would be a certain loss for the Democrats if Biden, for whatever reason, decides to step out, and that party steps over the first Black female vice president.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's that they would lose. They would definitely lose. Their support in the Black community, not just among women, would drop drastically.
Mm-hmm.
So they know that they can't do that. And you know what? Why are they doing this to Biden anyway? She's there. If something happens and he becomes infirmed and unable to finish a job, she would be the person that's going to take over anyway. So they need to get behind the candidate. I mean, in fact, the state polling and all of the crucial states, they're still within the margin of error, and it's we're 3 months away from the election, and as Biden has pointed out, now he's right. Polls before September 1st don't really mean anything because most people still aren't paying attention to this, and it's changed some because of the assassination attempt and the focus on Biden's age. But these polls, it's just too early. And even though it's early, they still are within the margin of error, even in those critical states.
Yeah.
And Trump is old too. He is old. His man is old. Something could happen to him.
And we knew that. we knew that in 2020.
That's
the people
right.
voted. That's who they voted for. It's like, come on, Democrats. Y'all are doing some dog whistles because we really know what the truth is. You want to talk about dog whistles? They are really doing that. We understand what's really happening. And even though you don't want to say it, that's who the American people chose. There were a lot of people that get, chosen, but that's who they chose. And stop asking this man. He said what he said when he said it. He didn't call Reverend Sharpton. He didn't call every civil rights leader. He has told you emphatically he is not. If he changes his mind, then deal with that. And if you have something else, just like Dr. Carter said, what is the plan? What is the plan? Where is the money coming from? They're about to catch an L. I'm telling you, if they do that, the backlash, because people will lose trust. Like, no, what's really behind this?
Yeah, I want to talk real quick about some news that came out on yesterday. This is that the Bowser administration, Muriel Bowser, the mayor of the District of Columbia, it was reported that she is developing a plan in the event that Donald Trump does win the election in November, because it is, and he has actually spoken about this at rallies, that there would be a takeover of DC. DC is not a state, as we know, and this certainly would be an argument for statehood, but he would take over the city, make some major changes. Certainly, Keith, this isn't the first time that the federal government has kind of had full control of what happens in the District of Columbia, and either a lot of people are too young to remember or have forgotten. Your thoughts about what the mayor is planning?
Well, she can plan all she wants to. I was city editor at the Washington Post when the Federal Control Board took over the city in about 95 to 2001. And there's really nothing you can do. And by the way, that the control board never went away. It's just not functioning. It's still, so the apparatus is there. The huge difference is it was done as a friend of the city back under the Clinton administration. The city was pretty much close to bankruptcy. I mean, they had, the revenue streams were drying up. And frankly, the city wasn't being run really well. And so they took it over and they restructured some things, like taking the prison system out of DC and turn it over to the federal government. Things like that that would make it easier to run the city with less like huge budget operational figures like a prison system when you're basically a city. But there's not much she can plan for it, and she should, she should say, well, I'm just going to sit and wait and see what happens. You can try to plan for it, but there's really not much she can do. If he decides to do that, even though some of the things he has pointed out are not really city functions, they're U.S. government functions. Like he talked about the monuments and graffiti on marble, which I haven't seen any, but that's the U.S. Park Service.
That's U.S. Park Service, government. Yeah.
So, but I also think it just sort of sounds like a lot of, not just Trump, but particularly Trump campaign rhetoric to make his base happy. And he has a long list of things from 2016 when he won that he promised to do that he just didn't do. I think a lot of it is just rhetoric, unless things aren't going well, in which case he can probably do some of that again to shore up his base if he wins.
Yeah, Dr. Carter.
I mean, I think though, I agree with Keith. There's nothing that they can do, right? I mean, DC is not a state; it's a federal district. So technically, he can federalize their police force. He can do a lot of things. And let's be clear, DC has gotten into different scuffles with the federal government over time across mayoralties, right? I mean, Vincent Gray had his back and forth over picking up trash when the government shut down before. I mean, so it wouldn't be the first time. I mean, we remember a few years ago, they were threatening DC over abortion, right? So conservatives have always use DC as a convenient whipping boy. I think we should always be concerned when we have, at least in this case, a plurality Black city still with a Black mayor and a Black city council, majority Black city council, that everybody wants to then pick DC as their sort of convenient rallying cry, right? DC, he said, you can get raped and murdered and all this other stuff, robbed down at the monuments. None of that stuff happens regularly or ever, right? Like there's no evidence of that, but they say that and people go, yeah, we got to take back the district, forgetting, and I say like on January 6th, that this is still a majority city of color. This is still a sanctuary city where people actually live, not just work downtown, where people actually live. And I think the fact that they want to come in and change the character of the district at this point is something we should all be paying particular attention to. I don't think they're just whistling Dixie. I don't think they're just joking. I don't think it's just a convenient rallying cry. Unfortunately, we saw them put the tanks down the city streets when the protests were happening in 2020. We saw what they said about Black Lives Matter Plaza when Mayor Bowser did that initiative. So I don't think that this is just something idle. I think this is an attempt to get back at the district. Because remember, it was DC police that showed up at the Capitol and those because
the National Guard did not get an order.
Exactly, and they're still in DC jail.
Yeah, real quick, Ebony, 30 seconds. I'm going to wrap up.
I think you are so right, Dr. Carter, what she said, because my biggest thing is increased federal control over policing, which could lead to more aggressive law enforcement tactics, which of course would disproportionately impact Black and brown communities. Even looking at the changes on, abortion, cannabis, and voting rights, whatever, just services actually that are also crucial to everyday citizens. And as a DC resident and native, it just kind of really burns me up. So I just want people to really pay attention. DC really needs to pay attention because he could really be on some serious get back in all of this. And I don't want us to just gloss over it and be like, oh, he wouldn't. No. This might be his bang to go out on us. So we just really have to pay attention in all of these situations and have these conversations with our families around the table.
Absolutely.
Dr. Niambi Carter, Keith Harrison, Ebony McMorris, thank you so much. Great panel. We will continue to watch this situation as always. That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, July 17th. I'm Harold Fisher.